I promised you that I would talk about SAA losing my luggage, South African Airways. Now, before I made this trip back to South America, I was debating a lot. I'm an Emirates customer. I prefer to fly on Emirates when I come to South America, but I thought I would give SAA a boost because everybody knows the drama of SAA and what they've been through over the years. And I guess a part of me was still a little bit patriotic and I wanted to support our flag carrier. So I booked a ticket in August last year for January, coming back to Argentina to do my stuff, whatever that is. That includes a lot of schooling. So when I did that, I bought an SAA ticket with confidence. It was actually very well priced. I decided to travel on New Year's because that was the cheapest, but also um, because I didn't want to travel when everybody else was traveling, so I chose a New Year's flight. But unbeknown to me, the whole world thinks like I do. So everybody bought tickets for that flight because it was almost sold out. Almost, not quite, but there's quite a lot of people coming back from Cape Town to holidays in Cape Town back to Brazil. And it was quite full. I met some interesting Jewish people. We had something in common. We had a lot very very interesting chats before the flight. And then the flight was delayed by some 3 hours. So SAA delayed by some 3 hours, which meant that I would miss my onward flight to Aeropark or Aeroparque in Buenos Aires in Argentina. So I had that sinking feeling when they said the flight is delayed by 1 hour and then the flight was delayed by 2 hours, then it was an extra hour. So instead of leaving at around 10, we were airborne at about 1 p.m., half past 12, 1 p.m., I think. But eventually we were airborne and we left South Africa and we headed for Guarulhos, which is Sao Paulo, the airport in Sao Paulo, which is a nightmare of an airport at the moment. It's a nightmare to navigate and there's construction going on and there's a lot of shoddy corners you have to turn in order to get to the other side through immigration, passport control, security, going all the way to the other side where the desks for the various airlines are. So that was quite a challenge. Anyways, we flew. Took us 10.5 hours or so. We got to Brazil, but we got there very late. And on the aircraft, I remember there was an announcement that people with onward flights should not worry. There's going to be people on the ground that are going to help them to connect with the next flight or to find their way to the next flight. And on this particular flight, were not only people going back to Brazil who had spent holidays in South Africa, but there were South Africans that work in Chile, South Africans like myself who are going to study somewhere in South America. And we had different onward flights, Santiago, Buenos Aires, and elsewhere. And some were vacationing in Brazil, South Africans at that time, I assume. And so we were delayed, and just before touchdown, this announcement comes on that people will help us. The exact words were people on the ground. So I asked the steward and I said, people on the ground? What do you mean people on the ground? Because if you go to a real airport like Dubai or anywhere else in the world or Heathrow or whatever, there's really people on the ground. Which means when you leave your aircraft and you get out of the tunnel onto the arrivals terminal heading to the carousel, there are actual people there that asks you, where are you going? Which is your flight? Please follow me. There are people on the ground literally, but in this airport, there were no people on the ground. There were no representatives of South African Airways. So we went through passport control because I had checked in my bags all the way to Buenos Aires, so I didn't have to go to the carousel. So we went to passport control, to the main terminal to catch a connecting flight. I found it very hard to find the main terminal. This airport is hot, no air conditioning, freaking mosquitoes everywhere, and I had to walk up and down from one point to another trying to find a South African Airways desk. I'm already 1.5 hours late, and I cannot find a South African Airways desk because everybody shares these desks at the airport, and if the South African Airways sign is off, then it's as if there's no South African Airways. And I get there and I start asking security. They say, well, the South African Airways staff have knocked off. You have to go to the terminal building where the offices are and literally go knock at their door so that they can organize you an onward flight. So I'm going up and down the terminal. I'm going to the one extreme of Sao Paulo airport to the another extreme because people are sending me around. But my instinct was to go to Gol Airlines first because my connecting flight was with Gol Airlines. And when I got to Gol, they said, sorry, sir, you miss your flight by a little bit, so you're going to have to buy a new ticket. That's not happening. Then I went to the customer service of Gol, and they said, well, we can't do much for you. You can at least try to check in so that you can go to the waiting area for your flight. So I went there and I produced my now obsolete ticket, and they scanned it, and it was obsolete, and I couldn't catch my onward flight. So I'm busy asking info centers and customer service, where can I find these useless South African Airways representatives there? And I cannot find them. It takes me about another hour or more walking up and down. And my health is not at its best. And I was pushing myself. And I had to walk up and down. After 2 hours, anyways, somebody gets a brain cell and they say, well, these guys come in the morning quite early, around 5. So if you just wait overnight, maybe in the morning first thing, you'll be able to get to these South African Airways reps and they will be able to organize you an onward flight. They had knocked off by then, but immediately, after a little bit that I arrived, I couldn't find them because they had knocked off because it was New Year's. They probably thought there are no passengers to help. I don't know. Maybe their work hours had expired, but if I want to think that if you knew that your one flight for that day is delayed, or your one of 2 flights for that day is delayed, you need to stick around so you can help the people on that aircraft. But before I can talk about people on that aircraft, I want to give me a sec. My phone was ringing, so I just want to tell the person that I'm busy talking to you guys and doing a video. So anyways, my bad customer service did not start with the lost luggage or unclear instructions. Bad customer service started on board the flight. So one very kind flight attendant said to me, sir, you've got a window seat and you look a bit squashed where you're sitting. Would you like to take the free aisle seats? There were 4 seats in the middle. Because this was an Airbus A380-800. Was it an 800? Yeah, 400 or 800. Anyways, there were 4 seats in the aisle that were not taken close to me, and he said you'll be more comfortable sitting there, and that was a cool idea. So I moved, and then it was time to serve. This was maybe after an hour and a half to 2 hours after takeoff. When they were about to serve meals, and I said thank you to that flight attendant for the bigger space. I could relax, I could stretch my legs a little bit because I'm not just a big person, but I'm a tall person as well. And This one flight attendant comes to me and she craps me out for having moved seats. Sir, why did you move seats? Now I cannot find you. I cannot give you your kosher meal because I don't know where you are sitting. If you are going to move, you need to ask us if it's okay that you move. You were assigned that seat for a reason. Blah, blah, blah. So I looked at her and I giggled sarcastically and I said, one of your chums told me I could move seats because I was a bit uncomfortable where I was sitting. I wasn't really uncomfortable, but it's always better to have bigger leg room, right? I chose that seat for a reason because I like to look outside, but I would trade looking outside for a little bit of comfort if I was offered 4 seats in the aisle. So anyways, she craps me out and she doesn't listen to what I'm saying. She gets cheeky with me. That was the first thing that I was like, okay, whatever. And then I see that the other flight attendants were not from South African Airways and they spoke Portuguese from Portugal. So this must be Angolan or Portuguese staff. I found that to be quite interesting as well. So, I want to show you something here. But I'm going to have to record the screen to show it to you. But I'm going to show it to you anyways. It's going to appear hopefully in the video. So now I can tell that this is not a South African Airways flight. It's been leased from another aviation company because I didn't recognize the pilots. I think I know South African Airways pilots, not all of them, but I'm familiar with their faces because I read a lot of aviation magazines, or I've read in the past a couple of them, a few of them I might know, and some of them I've read some awesome things about them because they are philanthropists and they are involved in other sectors of life. So I can tell between a South African crew and one that is not, and their uniforms were not South African Airways. They were wearing a more European epaulettes than South African ones. And their faces to me didn't look South African, they looked more Portuguese. Anyways, the aisle seat that I was sitting on, these economy seats, were not clean. They were dirty, they were grimy. And between the headrest and the pad that you're sitting on, there was a lot of dirt and grime and crumbs and things. It really wasn't clean. That's the economy part anyways. I don't know what business class was like, but anyways, that was economy part, and I could see this hybrid South African Airways crew of attendants and this Portuguese crew. Nothing clicked at that time. Nothing really clicked, but I'm busy recording on this other screen. I pulled up an agreement or news about an agreement between South African Airways and that awful Angolan airline. It has a bad safety record. It's not something that I would personally associate it with anything South African. But when I read on Google, as you can see on the screen on Google, it says South African Airways, SAA, and TAG, Angola Airlines, signed a strategic code-share agreement effective December 1, 2025 to expand regional and international connectivity between Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Luanda. This partnership allows both carriers to share codes enabling seamless bookings to destinations like Lisbon, São Paulo, Harare, and Lusaka. And then down here it says these agreements include Sao Paulo especially. So it means that at any given time, like it was on the 1st of January, that you might end up on an aircraft that is not South African Airways, and your experience will not be what you are buying from South African Airways. And my big lament about this cooperation is that TAG, these Portuguese Angolan aircraft, have the worst safety record. So you have to actually dig up magazine articles and news articles about how tag is perceived. But I just don't want to talk about perceptions. I have a personal experience with tag. In 2023, I was supposed to come back to South America, and as usual, I bought myself a one-way ticket because here in South America, I have to do something quite elaborate. So, having bought my one-way ticket through an agent on tag, I was denied boarding by tag staff in Johannesburg. And the reason why they denied me boarding, in my opinion, was not because I could not fly to South America. They made an excuse that in Brazil you have to have a return ticket even if you have an onward flight that you bought. And I want to say this in the most crude way possible. Absolute bull crap. Absolute bull crap. The tag staff at OR Tambo that are supposed to check you in were looking for a bribe. That's what I think now. Because when they denied me boarding, I phoned tag in Brazil, and tag in Brazil said, well, if they say in South Africa you cannot board, then you cannot board. There's nothing we can do. And then when I was turned back from checking in and I'm now going back home, one of those tag staff members that had turned me back comes to me and says, is there anything else that we could do for you? Here's what's been happening for years, and I heard this many years ago, that when African migrants are flying back home to their African countries, bribes are solicited from them at the airport. The problem was I was not an African migrant. I'm a South African, and I know my travel very well because I've frequented South America on return tickets, on one-way tickets. This has been my life in the past 15 years. And to prove to you that this was an absolute lie, an absolute bullcrap, is because when I got to Brazil on South African Airways, and this has never happened historically either, immigration did not ask me if I have a return ticket or not. This is because South Africans in Brazil, we have a convention with Brazil and Argentina and all of Latin America that if any of us arrive at each other's countries, we have 90 days in that country as tourists. In a case where I did not have a return ticket and I was staying in Brazil, then I would have to show that I've purchased another ticket out of the country. In this case, it was a ticket that I bought in 2003 on Gol Airlines, which would have taken me out of Brazil after 30 days of tourism and would have led me to Argentina. So this tag staff member approaches me on the way back from being rejected boarding, and she says, is there anything else that we can do? So now she wants to negotiate for a bribe. This is what I think. While I was there being rejected boarding, I also phoned the agency that I bought the ticket on tag on. And the agency showed that it was it had crooked intentions. They said, don't talk to us, talk to the airlines. And I said, well, you kind of took the money and you paid for that seat on the airline. The airline, when I phoned the customer service of the airline a day or so after the rejection and I had to go back home because my travel plans were ruined, they said, well, we couldn't give you the money back because it was the agency, you bought the ticket through an agent. The agent said, well, we cannot give you the money because the seat has already been purchased. And that agency is called cheaptickets.com. I've used them a lot. But unbeknown to me, after COVID, they would have criminal tendencies. So after they realized that they had an opportunity to steal my money and not reimburse me, they disappeared. They deleted my account at cheaptickets.com. They blocked me from talking to customer service. On this other side, Tag Airlines does not want to understand what's going on. They say, well, it's not our fault, you bought it through third party. But they are the ones who blocked me from boarding my flight, citing that in Brazil I'd be turned back, which I knew then was bullshit, and I know now it is absolute bullshit, because no South African has ever been turned back from an onward journey from Brazil. I've done this many times. So if we go to my LinkedIn, I should actually open my WhatsApp as well on this side and look for that tag conversation with Tag Airlines, if I still have it, where customer service basically is trying to blame the agent, and the agent had disappeared. I've used that agent a few times. I didn't have any complaints, but they saw an opportunity to run away with money, and so did Tag. They were not going to pay me back. So as the customer, I was screwed over, and I should apparently go to hell. So as you can see on the screen, I'm talking to the then CEO, and I don't know if he's still the CEO. His name was Giovanni Simonini, an Italian. He's based in Johannesburg, or he was based in Johannesburg, so I assume he has no problem speaking English. I'm sure he can speak the English with no problem. He says, or I say to him, kind sir, if I do not hear from you by lunchtime tomorrow, I'll be sharing my whole ordeal on Hello Peter. Basically, I gave him the lowdown about what's going on. So I write to him about the massive complaint, blah, blah, blah. And I cannot tell if he saw this or not, but I assume he should have access to his own LinkedIn, because he did accept my invitation. I couldn't send him the message without him accepting my invitation. So he had access to this. So I told him I was refused boarding and there's no refund being given to me. And I say, thank you for accepting my invitation. I hope to be able to talk to you soon. And I do talk to him, and I give him my number. And I say, if I don't hear from you, I'm going to go and share this entire ordeal on Hello Peter regarding Tag, which I did. I went and reported them on Hello Peter. And when I went to Hello Peter, the website, I found a ton of complaints from South Africans who thought it was a proper way to get a Tag experience to go to Sao Paulo in Brazil. And they were not. They went through similar experiences or worse. And then my last message to him, my question is, why does your airline allow me to check myself in if I'm not allowed to travel on a one-way ticket? So I'm busy interrogating this bullshit story. Why can't I get my refund or get credited for a future date? So now I'm not even concerned about the money. I'm saying, okay, save the seat for me and let's do it for a future date. And I had to ask for a future date because I would lose money on this trip for a music concert that I always wanted to go to, which was in Bahia. I was losing money on a music concert. I was losing money on travel arrangements to get to that music concert. I was losing money on hotels and accommodation that I couldn't get refunds for. And I was losing money for regional plane tickets as well. So it was a big loss for nothing, because some corrupt worker at Tag wanted to solicit a bribe, thinking I'm an African migrant and I must ask for permission to go back to my own country, wherever that is. So what am I trying to say with all of this? What I'm trying to say is, it's not comforting for the traveler and the knowledgeable enthusiast of aviation. It's not comforting to know that South African Airways is cooperating with people such as Tag Airlines. It's not comforting at all, because it means that the customer service is going to go down, the customer experience is going to go down, there's not going to be customer service, there's not going to be accountability, and then there's the safety issue. The safety issue, because every time somebody flies Tag, it feels like you are flying something that should have been retired already. So that's what happened. And I shouldn't be surprised that my luggage was lost, because when you combine two things that shouldn't combine, maybe it's not the best experience in the world. So anyways, back to my luggage. Let me finish recording here. You are flying something that should have been retired already. So that's what happened. And I shouldn't be surprised that my luggage was lost, because when you combine two things that shouldn't combine, maybe it's not the best experience in the world. So anyways, back to my luggage. Let me finish recording here. I finished recording my screen. So now we have a problem where we have this delay. Let me go to... So now we have this delay, almost 3 hours or 3 hours, and I'm panicking now about my luggage. Where is my luggage? Is it going to reach my destination? Because now I've missed my flight. I don't know where my luggage is. I try to phone SAA customer service, and obviously they won't talk to me because it's outside office hours. They have an answering machine going on there, and they don't have a 24-hour call center. So if you are out there on your own, needing help outside their work hours, you're pretty much screwed. And I'm in the airport now in Sao Paulo, and I'm panicking because it's quite late, you know. I'm panicking because it's quite late. I don't have an onward flight, and I'm not going to spend money buying another flight, because it's SAA's responsibility to be on time, and it's SAA's responsibility to make the proper arrangements for people that have missed their flights. So there was nobody on the ground to meet me when I left the aircraft, to say you need to go to such and such a place. And when I got to the right place where I was supposed to be, lo and behold, those dingbats were not there. So I spent the night in an airport on a bench, sleeping on a bench, being bitten by mosquitoes, risking chikungunya, dengue, you name it. Because that airport in Sao Paulo is just infested with mosquitoes, and there was no air conditioning. It was very warm. But I survived the night, and in my condition, back then, I was not too good health-wise. I could not afford not to sleep at night. So I slept maybe 1 hour on the benches, and it became very painful to sleep on the bench. And I woke up, and I had to start messaging South African Airways. And then when I started messaging South African Airways in the morning at about 5 o'clock, no, it was about 3:30 in the morning, Brazilian time, Sao Paulo time. And somebody at South African Airways customer service was there, and I explained the situation to them, and they went into the system and they looked, and this lady comes back to me and phones me, and she says, did she actually phone me? I can't remember if it was a phone call or an email. But anyways, she replies to me, she says, what? You don't know that you have a provisional booking that we made for you? Not on Gol Airlines this time, but on Argentinian Airlines. You don't know that you have a provisional booking? I said, no, I don't. If I didn't write to you and try and phone you, I wouldn't have known that you made a provisional booking for me while I was sleeping on the bench being bitten by mosquitoes for the morning at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. And she was embarrassed because she didn't know that I didn't know, I wasn't informed by SAA that since I missed my flight, I had now a provisional booking. She apologizes and she says, your flight is at 5 in the morning with Argentinian Airlines. And then I ask her, what about my luggage? Should I assume that because now you've made this provisional booking that my luggage is actually going to meet me in Buenos Aires when I get there? Will it be transferred from Gol, wherever that is, to Argentinian Airlines? She says, yes, that's usually the process. I assume that's going to be what's going to happen. All right. In the morning, according to the new bookings on the system that I have now received unintentionally from their side, I guess, or by accident, good for me, I looked at where the terminal is and I had to walk again. After walking 2.5 hours the night before around this stupid airport, I had to walk again to the extreme side of the airport, which took me another 15 minutes of walking, and I was suffering by this time because I hadn't eaten and medication was in my system, and my muscles were cramping up and I was suffering. So I went to the other side of the airport and I found this stupid terminal, and I was able to check in with a new... Actually, I had to have it printed, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I had to have it printed, and then I had to go and swipe, check in, and be able to go and sit in the lounge and wait for Argentinian Airlines. So by now, I've used 3 airlines. South African Airways, Gol that wouldn't let me board. Now I'm on Argentinian Airlines and I'm wondering if my luggage is safe. Or it will reach the same time, it will reach Argentina the same time as me. So anyways, I board Argentinian Airlines and I get to Argentina at about 10:30 in the morning. I land at Aeroparque and I realize my luggage is not with me, so I get on the horn again with South African Airways, writing emails. Hey, where's my luggage? Where's my luggage? Everybody's clueless about my luggage. But before I did that, let me go back. When I landed in Argentina and realized that my luggage is not there, I went to Argentinian Airlines customer service and I told them that my luggage was checked in on Gol, but I missed my Gol flight. Now I was booked with you, but my luggage is not here. So the customer service guy on Argentinian Airlines was phenomenal. He took all the details down, and by this time I had lost my tickets because everybody who rejected my check-in attempts handled the tickets. So now I don't remember where my tickets are and I don't remember where the tag is for my luggage, because somebody who has my condition, if we don't sleep at night, we lose all cognitive ability. So I could not remember a thing because I hadn't slept. And I had this condition and medication raging in my body. So I couldn't remember anything until I'd slept. And then after I'd slept in Argentina, then I could remember everything. So, before I leave the airport, I explained everything to this Argentinian customer service guy, and he was phenomenal. He understood that I lost the tag, and he went out of his way, him and his boss went out of their way to find me the tag, to recover the number of the tag for my luggage. It took 7 days for me to have my luggage again. And during these 7 days, South African Airways is just going up and down. They're not getting into the matter. Instead, they say to me, sir, if you have problems with your luggage, our turnaround time is 10 days. So I have to wait 10 days for them to start the investigation, not to find my luggage. Argentinian Airlines did a phenomenal job. They sent their representatives in Sao Paulo airport to Gol, for Gol to locate in their system and in their warehouse where the flip my luggage was. They found it. and then they book it on a fourth airline, which is LATAM. So now my luggage went from SAA to GOL to Argentinian Airlines. Now it's going to LATAM. It took four airlines to get my luggage back to me for it to arrive in Argentina. So when my luggage arrived, the representatives, the customer service representatives on Argentinian Airlines were more excited about the finding of this luggage, the location of it, and it arriving in Argentina than I was. I was indifferent by this time because I'd spent 7 days wearing the same clothes and washing my socks and my underpants where I stayed. You know, where I stayed, that's where I wash my pair of undies and my socks. And I was wearing the same yucky clothes, now sweaty clothes, for 7 days that I've been going out to the shops with and walking around the city with, taking photos and trying to enjoy myself. But I was becoming the photograph because now I've been wearing the same clothes for 7 days. So, anyways, I don't know who. I still want to write to Argentinian Airlines and say thank you. I would like to get that guy a promotion. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to look into it. The possibility of contacting his boss and recommending him for some sort of accolade or promotion and express my absolute gratitude. And SAA, I confronted SAA on social media, on LinkedIn, about this, and they were apologizing and they were tagging other people. And the people that were tagged, it's as though they were waking out of sleep, of a deep sleep. And a 10-day turnaround. Are you serious? A 10-day turnaround to find your client's luggage. You're out of your mind. So unfortunately, I still have some flying to do with SAA, but I think I'm going back to my roots. I'm going to become a loyal Emirates customer again, because on Emirates, I know where I'm going, I know where my luggage is. If something's wrong, they will know before even I know. If there's a delay or whatever, I will know beforehand. You know, and that's why I think we tend to buy and support foreign airlines, because there's predictability. Most importantly, there's customer service. Whether you are flying coach, economy, premium economy, or business, you are treated the same kind of. You are their valued client. So I was happy to be reunited with my luggage, and I'm grateful to Argentinian Airlines. Aerolíneas Argentinas, they did an amazing job. And eventually, I was reunited with my luggage, and my luggage got to me safely. They had asked me of the descriptions for the description of my luggage, and I described my luggage perfectly to them. They found it in Sao Paulo, and I must express that when they did find it, it was not attended by anyone remotely representing GOL or South African Airlines. It was not attended. It was in a random stack of luggage, but they were able to find it. And I think in the future, I will consider supporting Argentinian Airlines and other foreign airlines for regional and international flights between South Africa and South America.